Right, here we are again. Hello everyone, it's the 5th... Hang on. I've been interrupted every time this series so far. There's no way that's going to happen again. What I need is some sort of protection. Yeah, that's what I need, protection. Hang on, I'll just go and find some, hang on. What can I use? Oh look, hang on a bit, I'm not falling for that again. Sorry. Right, let's have a look.
Oh, hello, Benito.
Hello, Major Bumsaw, what are you doing in there?
Oh, you know me, Benito. Just keeping myself to myself.
Well, fair enough. Actually, come out here a minute. You could be of some use. Come out here.
Okay, give me a second.
Oh, okay, Benito. Hang on a sec. Oh, oh, right. Oh, God, it's been a long time no see, Benito, I must say. Now, what do you want me to do exactly? Oh, come on. Haven't you been watching the series so far? Me? Watch the show? I've watched it since I last appeared, mate, which was a bloody long time, by the way. Can I have some explanation for that, please? Yeah, oh yes, later, but for the moment, Sam's trying to take over this programme and we've got to stop him. How would you feel if the whole of this YouTube channel, which has been going for 8 years, by the way, was taken over by some useless layabout? Come on, we need to take this seriously. But what's happened to the humour, Benito? On a Saturday night, people used to gather around their YouTube screens to see Benito's explanations, and it was hilarious, absolutely hilarious, Benito. Admittedly, I used to provide all the jokes, so what's happening? Oh, come on. I realised it wasn't very funny ages ago. You know, sorry to disappoint you and all that. For the moment, just stand there, alright? Because as the record goes, these are getting more views at the moment, and you're not really needed. You'll probably be axed eventually. Anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Just stand there and do something. Okay, bye, Major. Fair enough. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. Oh, I'm enjoying this. God, when we'll afford the budget to get both of us on the same screen at the same time, I'll never know. Ah, right, hello everyone, finally we can start! Right, let's get properly started then. Electroreception in air. We've left sound now, we're going into one of those alien sensors which clearly we can't do, okay? The ability to sense electricity. Now, it's been known for many years that lots of aquatic species are able to sense electricity, and in fact we're going to have a video dedicated to that later in the series, okay? That's very common knowledge. But water is a conductor, air isn't. So how can terrestrial organisms be able to detect electric fields? Well, they can, and I'm very proud to say that this is a true Bristolian topic. It was researchers here in Bristol that came to this discovery. So isn't that exciting? What a time to be patriotic, you know, what a time to be alive. Now the first thing to take into account is that everything that's alive has some sort of electrical footprint, okay? Most of the time not a very large one, but electrical footprint nonetheless. And the big discovery that I've been talking about in Bristol is the ability of bees to detect electric fields. And this all concerns the topic of the coevolution between pollinators and their flowers, okay? Known, you know, ever since you were at primary school, right? Flowers need pollinators, pollinators need flowers, okay? They're best friends, the flower and the pollinator. They work together. The bees, in this case, there are loads of other types of pollinators, obviously, want the nectar of the flower, and the flower wants that some of the pollen that's produced by the flower to be rubbed off on the bee and transported somewhere else. Yeah, so then you get cross-fertilization, and the genes of that flower can spread to another, and you'll get diverse offspring, okay? And these pollinators and flowers have been co-evolving together for millions of years, okay? They're highly dependent on each other. So therefore, loads of traits have evolved to increase pollinator attraction. Because there's so many flowers out there, a flower basically acts as a sensory billboard, right? It's trying to stand out from all the others to increase its chances of attracting a pollinator against all the other flowers that are surrounding it. So you could say within a meadow there's an evolutionary arms race going on between all the different species of flowers in that meadow, because each one wants to attract the bees more. They want to be like, oh, look at me, come and pollinate me, right? So it's brutal, you know, it all looks very pretty but it's brutal. So, well, we all know things that help attract bees to flowers. So, for example, colour is the obvious one. If you're really colourful, then you're more likely to attract a bee. Loads of tactile cues are also used, you know, different structures on the flower attract particular pollinator species. That's all very technical, we're not going to go into that. Scent is obviously a big one. Loads of flowers smell nice, that's used to attract pollinators. Loads of things. And we're going to be talking later in the video how it's this multimodal effect which increases recognition by pollinators, so it's very useful. But one cue which hadn't been looked at for many, many years, been completely overlooked, was that of the electric field. And why is the electric field important? Why does the electric field give some valuable information to the bees that a flower is particularly good at being pollinated? Right? Well, you've got to take into some physics now. So here I have is a beautiful diagram of a flower. Isn't it the most beautiful flower you've ever seen? I think so too. Now, at a very basic level, our atmosphere, you know, made up of its nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, has a lot of electrons in it. So much so that it's slightly negatively charged, right? So that means these flowers are going to be attracting electrons, making the tips of the flowers ever so slightly negatively charged, right? A pollinator, on the other hand, zooming through the atmosphere, well, that's going to have electrons swept off it, okay? As it's moving through, electrons are going to be moved off, okay? So that's going to make a pollinator slightly positively charged, or anything moving through the atmosphere, okay? This is simply due to friction, right, as bees are flying through the atmosphere. Now, you don't have to be Professor Brian Cox to understand that opposites attract, right? A negative attracts a positive attracts a negative. So there you go. The flower here is attracting the bee. But that doesn't explain why it's useful, okay? And why it's useful is because the electric field is a cue which can change quickly. It can signal how good a flower is instantaneously, right? So, imagine you're a flower with loads of nectar, yeah? And you've got a negative charge, as we've said, that's going to attract a bee which is positively charged to the flower and feed on that nectar. But that bee's having a great time. It's taking up all that nectar. In fact, it scoffs a lot, okay? So by the time the bee leaves, there's no nectar left. So that means now that flower isn't a very good flower at all, because it's got no nectar. There's no reward for the bees at all. There's no point of a pollinator visiting. So any pollinators which come after that bee which scoffed a lot are going to think, oh god, this is a shit flower, isn't it? So what if the flower could signal to the bees, say, hang on guys, I'm storing up on nectar here, I need some nectar, come back in 10 minutes and I'll have some more for you, right? What if a flower could do that? Well, it can with its electric field, because as the bee lands on the flower, it charges the flower up, right? So it becomes less negatively charged. This flower is now signalling to its pollinators, due to its electric field, that it's just been visited by another bee, so it may not have enough nectar for them. Okay? And as the flower begins to store more and more negative, it will lose more of that positive charge, so it will become negative again. So therefore it will signal again to the pollinators, hey look, come and pollinate me. Now you can measure the electric charge of a bee by putting it in something called a Faraday cage, named after, of course, Mr. Faraday, inventor of electricity, right? There you go. So you put it in and it comes out as about 32 picocoulombs, which isn't very large, admittedly, but it's an electrical field nonetheless. The atmosphere also has an electric field because there's a gradient. In fact, as you go up every meter, there's a change in the electric potential of about 100 volts. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Didn't know that. So that means any flower that's grounded, yeah, that's on the ground, will have some sort of an electrical potential. You can measure this by just simply sticking some electrodes into a flower and watching a bee come in. Now what's interesting is that the flower begins to depolarize before the bee even makes contact with the flower. Okay, that's interesting. And then when the bee makes contact with the flower, then it really shoots up. And then once the bee leaves, it takes time for the flower to become negative again. Okay, it's very simple studies really. Now this change in voltage of the flower received by those electrodes as the bee approaches shows that the electrical status of that flower has changed. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Now you can do some experiments with this, and in fact we talked about similar experiments in the behaviour series last year. Good times. So you've got an experiment. In fact, let's show you the experiment. Admittedly, this is quite a simple experiment to understand, but I thought I'd do a demo anyway, just to keep the viewing figures up. you know what I'm saying? Going through hard times and all that. So what we have here, we have 4 platforms, which are obviously trying to mimic flowers, but any cues, any other cues which could have shown that they were flowers, are taken away by using platforms. So that means we can be sure that it's electric fields that are having an effect on the bees' choices. Okay, so loads of bumblebees were taken, Bombus terrestris to be exact, which is a common bumblebee species in the UK, and they were released onto these platforms. Now, half of these platforms were filled with sucrose solution, sweet solution, sugar. The bees want that, yeah? The other half were filled with a bitter taste, quinine, yeah? That's a chemical used in tonic water, okay? It gives a very bitter taste. Bees don't like that. So let's say these 2 are the sucrose ones. The ones which are filled with sucrose were given an electrical charge, 30 volts to be exact. So I'm going to represent that by putting some charges in there. Right, isn't this fun? And then they release the bees, right? And obviously bees are going to want to go to the sucrose ones more. But the question is, after successive trials, do the bees learn which platforms to go to based on their electric fields? Okay, so that was the first trial. In the second trial, they used completely new platforms, and maybe they mixed around the platforms a little bit, so which ones had the electric fields and which ones didn't. Okay, they released the bees again, and they realised that after successive trials, as you do more and more of those things, the bees made an increasing amount of correct responses. So they didn't even bother going to the ones with quinine in. They used the cues of the electric field to know and to learn that these are the ones that they wanted to go to, the ones with the electric field. Okay? So that tells us a lot about how animals learn, yeah? They were conditioned, if you like, and we talked all about that last year. We're not going into that now. But there you go. And they found that after 50 visits, they're 80% sure of where they're going. So that's pretty cool. And if you do this experiment again without the electrical charge, then they're back at rock bottom again. They haven't got a clue which flower to go to because they were using the electric fields of the flower as a cue. That's all very well, but then Clark, Whitney, Sutton and Robert went one step further. What they did was they got some electrostatic paint, right? So that's charged paint, and sprayed it at a petunia. The paint's positively charged because obviously the flower's negatively charged, so opposites attract and all that. And they saw that the pattern of spreading of the paint on the flower changed. Okay? So for example, there was more paint around the edges of the flower. So that showed that indicated that there was a more negative charge around the edges of a flower. And this has been shown in other flowers as well. In the foxglove, for example, decorations on the flower have a greater electric potential than other parts of the flower. Now, flowers in November are pretty hard to get hold of, but I just went and stole a clipping from next door of this beautiful flower. Now, do you know what this is? This is Doctor Who's favourite flower. It's the fuchsia. Now if you look at that, I mean I'm only taking a guess here, but I mean this has little sticking out bits here. The electrical field on this flower is probably not very even. Maybe there's a greater electric field here, around the edges or towards the middle. I don't know really. In fact, I don't even know why I picked this. Take it back, neighbours. So, it's not homogeneous, this electric field on the flower. It's heterogeneous, and maybe it's useful in guiding the insects to where they want to go and get the nectar, or, you know, so that they can get the pollen for the plant as well. Now, to look at this, another experiment was done. Here, similar sort of experiments, platforms with either sucrose or quinine were used. There were two types of platform though. One had an overall positive charge, just like the one before, yeah? The other one had a hole cut out of it, which was then reinserted, but at a different charge. That actually had a negative charge. So this is what we call the bullseye pattern. So in the bullseye pattern, we put sucrose. In this one, we put quinine, okay? And released the bees again and carried out exactly the same trial as before, okay? And they found that after 40 visits, the percentage of correct visitations was greater for this experiment, so bees going to the bullseye pattern, than they were in the previous experiment when all the platforms were the same. This suggested to the scientists that bees could discriminate between different structures of the electric field. That's amazing, and flowers could be using those, such as the foxglove and the petunia, to increase the floral queue. So it's more visible to the bees, if you like. So more bees will go and visit it, and more bees will pollinate it. Very clever. So we talked at the start of the video about multimodal cues. It's time to put them to the test now. So same scientists did a similar kind of experiment. So they used flowers of different hues, so two of different colours. The colour of these platforms were different shades of green, okay? So one was dark green, the one was light green, okay? So the ones which are dark green had sucrose, the ones which are light green had quinine. Then after that trial was done, they introduced the electric field. What do you think happened? Well, of course, the bees were quicker at reaching that 80% accuracy, okay? So this is evidence of multimodal input, okay? The greater the number of cues you have, whether that be colour, scent, and electric fields, they will enhance, it will facilitate learning in those bees. And if you facilitate learning, then that's a good idea if you're a flower, because that means you can rely on your bees to come to you and take your nectar and transfer your pollen everywhere. It's a beautiful, beautiful relationship. Now what's even more interesting about this is that people didn't really know how the bees were able to sense the electric fields. They didn't know what the receptors were. Until very, very recently. I'm talking June 2016, right? A paper was published with one of the authors being Daniel Robert from Bristol, and he found that there were hairs. Bees are very hairy, right? There's mechanosensory hairs on the bee that if you introduce an electric field, are deflected a little bit, and that results in a neural impulse which leads to a response. So there you go, how up to date can you get? And that's all I've got time for. Now there'll be another video on electroreception later in the series, but next time we're going to be looking at another alien sense, which is the ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field. Right, I'll see you then. That was a perfect video, that was very interesting.
Benito, there's someone at the door.